Good morning, good afternoon, and good night, and welcome to the pod where we chat, argue, or wax poetic about the movies that we love, hate, or that are simply worth talking about. Every movie has something to share, and we love trying to analyze why they capture. Welcome to the Chatter After as we celebrate the summer of Superman with the Chatter After crew and the Superman on Film man himself, Mario Francisco Robles. What's up, Primus?
Yeah, happy to be aboard. It's the summer of Superman. I couldn't think of a better time to hop on the chatter after than right about now. So I'm glad you invited me.
Yeah. We are so excited to start talking about Superman. This is the second episode that we do in this Summer of Superman series, as we prepare and enjoy the character as we lead up to the release of James Gunn's Superman.
Yes.
And today, we are going to talk about what makes a great story a Superman story. And of course, we're going to then dive into the amazing Warner Brothers animation production, Superman versus the Elite, which I think it's one of the better solo Superman films that they have put out. They did a great job with All Star Superman. They have Superman Unchained, but there's a very special place in my heart of Superman versus the Elite because of the themes that it tackles, how it tackles and lifts up the character for this generation and generations past. And I think it's a great topic of conversation, apart from the fact that I've been trying to record about this movie for almost 5 years. But it's happening today. Oh,
You're not bitter. You're not bitter or anything.
I am not bitter at all. I'm excited. But
better late than never.
Yeah, right. If you want to enjoy our other coverage in the summer of Superman, last week we posted our first Superman on Film episode on the Christopher Reeve era of the character. This week you'll get a little bit of Brandon Routh. Next week will be Henry Cavill, and we're gonna close it up talking about Superman, David Corenswet, whenever that film drops on July 14th, the same right after opening weekend of this amazing
there you go.
movie. So yeah, no, but it didn't. It was but we are very excited. We're excited to talk Superman. And the first topic we're going to talk about as we break into the idea of a great story, because we have great stories, and there's a lot of great stories that have Superman in it. Justice League stories, World's Finest Batman and Superman stories, Superman stories where Superman makes cameo appearances. But there are there's a certain weight and thematic elements that make a great story a great Superman story, because being Superman, the take on the character has to be particular, and you have to understand the character in a way to be able to tell a story that has a lot of weight and honors the character. And I wanted to throw that topic out there. And Mario,
yes,
you're joining us, and I don't know, you like the character a bit.
A little bit.
If you were asked this question, because we've had plenty of stories that we've read. We have plenty of films of the character, representing the character or putting the character in the front that we've seen, but not all of them have clicked correctly with us as fans and with the public overall. What do you think are the keys of a great Superman story?
Well, I mean, first and foremost, the characterization has to be right. Superman is not a man of action as much as he is a man of ideals. He's a man of great principle and values and integrity. And I think the movies that really kind of put forth his idealistic qualities and what he tries to, the hope he inspires, the friendship and partnership that he tries to exude, those are the ones that go best. The ones that try to make him seem like a blunt force instrument of action and punching things don't go over quite well. So to me, the heart and the emotion are the most important thing. I was talking about this the other day, that it's unique with Superman, where with a lot of these book characters, the main thing you look for when the casting happens is, do they look like their comic book counterpart? It's more about like the physique, the look, the overall visual quality. But with Superman, it's also about like, what energy does this actor give off? There's a certain Superman level of kindness and warmth that has to be exuded by this actor. There's a certain like unspoken gentleness to him that has to come through. He can't just look like he's made from stone and etched out of a mountain somewhere. He actually needs to seem like somebody who would be your friend, who you would want to go to in your time of need, whether it's for help, whether it's just for a little advice, whether it's just to be like, hey, can I get a hug? There's a softness to Superman that's required that makes casting him so unique. And it's because the stories, it's not just about all the cool stuff he can do. It's about the messages behind them. And it's about the ways he tries to inspire humanity. There's just an innate emotional core that has to be there for any good Superman story. And if he's just punching stuff, and if he's just showing off how powerful and godlike he is, it's not really a Superman story. So I don't know, if that covers it. That's my take on what's most important there.
What from the comics that you've scoured, Cliff, in the last couple of years, what is your take on it, Cliff?
Oh man, I feel like Mario kind of just hit on the head. Like, I don't know how I can follow that up, honestly, but for me, what makes a good Superman story is, obviously it's an amalgamation of so many things, but I think at the core, which is also funny because I'm catching up on everything. I'm just like, oh, it kind of already hits kind of my beliefs around it, but I truly think it is placing Superman, a character who seems the most ordinary in depiction. This very simplistic guy, this very simplistic man who just, I always like to say, he puts his best foot forward in a world where that is extremely difficult every day. And it comes in multiple levels, from him just trying to go to work every day versus him, putting on the cape and now trying to save the world, doing anything, or in this case, the universe, and we see that. I think it works best when he's up against characters who constantly not only like puts his beliefs at conflict, not just physically, but also morally, but also kind of mentally as well. And I love when he has his team up stories that kind of puts it into perspective, like, oh, I'm not all powerful. Yes, I have these great abilities, but this doesn't always work for every situation. So I need to figure out what is plan B, what is plan C to get the overall outcome of, I'm just trying to do good, because it's something I was taught, and it's something that now I've like pledged the rest of my life to do, essentially. But yeah, that's kind of how I feel the most in terms of like what makes a really good Superman movie. And you can kind of take that and place it at any point in time. I don't know if we have that many like futuristic Superman stories outside of like Legion of Superhero stuff, but that's not a realm that's been explored as much as they probably should, now that I think about it.
What you got, Deku?
Oh boy. What makes a good Superman story is a tough question, and this is something that people have been struggling to do for like 85 years now, right? I think it's just understanding who Superman is as a person, right? Like, we just talked Superman the movie this past week, right, on the channel. And something that we forgot to highlight that's very important is that he never throws a single punch in that story. And it doesn't even matter, because Superman, as strong as he is, it's never really been about the powers, right? It's kind of always been about who Clark Kal-El is as a person. And like Cliff was just saying, challenging his morality, right? This story that we're about to talk about is also like questioning where his place is in this society, and in this era today. Does it still need Superman? And how you tackle that, you can do that in various ways, right? You can do that where Snyder had him questioning that, or you can do it like in this story where he's kind of like absolute in his feelings on the subject, pushing Superman to his limit morally, ethically, I think is always more interesting. That's why a character like Lex Luthor can exist, right? Lex Luthor doesn't have the power physically to match up against Superman, but he challenges him in other ways. And that's what I think you bring the most interesting aspects of the character out that way, because Clark is strong in almost every single way. So challenging him is something that the writer has to get. They have to take their time and really like craft that story around it. And so, yeah, basically understanding the heart of the character, like Superman and Lois, great TV shows. They said, hey, we're going to challenge him by giving him 2 teenage boys. And it's like that one little wrinkle was enough to like completely change how you perceive this interpretation of Clark. So there's a lot of different things you can do to like maximize the story for Superman. So many different directions you can go. But I think at the heart of it, you need to understand Clark Kent.
I go back to one of the things that we talked about during the conversation, and there's a little tidbit for whenever we get into the Henry Cavill side of it, is that one of those things that that movie highlights is when it comes to the identity of the character, Zack Snyder always put Superman first. The alien aspect, the God aspect, was always in the forefront of his interpretation and presentation of the character. But as I believe it was Cliff you that mentioned it on the last pod, that really brings to light where James Gunn is coming from. The first still that we got of David Coruscant's version is Corrin Sweat suiting up, which is a way of highlighting that the key to this character is not that Superman is this godlike figure, is that the man Clark Kent chooses to become Superman. That is his way of doing the right thing. That is his way to express what he thinks, what he believes, and what he thinks he can contribute to society. So that idea of Clark Kent becoming the hero, it's always been more interesting, and it's always been at the heart of the best stories. Because in a movie like what we're going to talk about in a minute now, if Clark Kent isn't first, there's no need for Clark Kent to go back home and talk to Pops about it. Because it, like, the cape is just a different side of him that the world sees, but the real struggle is the conversations he has with Pa Kent, the conversations he has with Lois, the conversations that he hears of the kids interacting and reacting to everything the elites are doing. That is the meat in the story in regards to the character and what makes the character so interesting. So it all goes back to what we've all said. In essence, is like if you get the essence of what makes the character amazing, right? Then everything will fall into place. But as a writer, it's gonna bring challenges because you got to write a story where you don't change who he is, but you allowed him to react to what's happening, and that is hard to do because he's always going to be who he is. He's not going to stop being who he chooses to be, and I don't know, that makes him. That's why when you have a great story, it really stands out. And I think that this particular film is, and based on the comic book, What's So Funny About Truth, Justice, and American Way, written by Joe Kelly. It is such a powerful and interesting movie. So I think we're ready to talk about Superman vs. Elite, guys. Mike, you had something together about the book. I'll leave you to it, man.
Yeah, well, like you said, this is based on a one-off issue in Action Comics, and that's what makes this so fascinating. This is the first DC animated movie to adapt a single issue. Usually they would adapt like graphic novels. But yeah, this is Action Comics issue 775. What's So Funny About Truth, Justice, and the American Way? And this entire book only exists because Joe Kelly was reading The Authority, and it pissed him off because of how cynical they were. He's on record saying, I was reading The Authority, and I got so mad I had to go and take it out in Superman. And I just think that's so interesting because we're getting an Authority movie. So we'll see how that fits into this DCU whenever that comes out. But yeah, this book came out in 2001, so we're in the early 2000s. We have characters from like Spawn, Deadpool, The Authority, The Boys would come out a few years later, right? Omni-Man and Invincible would come out like a couple years after that. And so we're in this era, I like to call it the edgelord era, where all of these characters are anti-heroes, right? Like they're all Rob Liefeld characters. They've got a bunch of guns, they're gonna kill people, and they're gonna just exist in that like cynicism. We even have in the mainstream comics, we have the X-Men getting as edgy as they've ever been. We have Venom showing up, getting his own series. We have Azrael Batman, and if you guys know Azrael Batman, you know how messy that is. And so Joe Kelly writes this single issue because he starts questioning himself. How did we get here? Superheroes, like, they used to inspire us. Growing up, we wanted to become Superman, right? We wanted to fight for justice like Batman. We wanted to try our hardest like Spider-Man. Superheroes are basically a way for us to try to be better, right? They were the ideal to strive towards, to quote Man of Steel, right? And then at some point, they stopped uplifting us and they just became a power fantasy. Instead of like helping people defeat their demons, they started embracing them, right? They started embracing that darkness. And so this entire story is basically asking, like, what happened? When did these characters become boring, lame, corny? And what's so funny about Superman wanting to fight for truth, justice, right? Wanting to teach us to be better. That's basically where this book is coming from. And I think it's interesting how, to this day, this is a battle that we have to fight over and over and over. Because when this movie comes out about 10 years later, Man of Steel comes out right after that. Injustice comes out like the year before. And so Superman himself is now entrenched of, even his own stories aren't free from him embracing the darkness or trying to fix the character or become more edgy. And so this is almost like a timeless story for the character, because every now and then DC needs to release a story to remind us why Superman rocks. We got Kingdom Come. We got What's So Funny About Truth, Just the American Way. And then we got Superman versus the Elite. And we might be due for another Superman story that reminds us why the OG is awesome very soon. But yeah, like, I just think the history of this is so interesting, because it's a fight that the character will just be engulfed in probably from now till the end of time of, hey, doing the right thing isn't bad or cliche or boring. Sometimes you just want to do good for the sake of doing good. You know, you don't need a tragic backstory to do it, even though Superman does have a tragic backstory, but not that much.
He couldn't escape that bullet. It's there.
Yeah, you know, the entire planet blew up, so nobody had it worse than him, I guess.
Bruce Wayne is just scouring in the background, like, how dare you?
I just lost my mom and dad. You lost your whole planet.
Martha.
But that's what makes the comic so interesting, is because it's in DC continuity. So Lex Luthor's president for some reason, you know, because we were doing that at the time, and we're asking if killing is wrong in this story. And it's just like, I wonder what Batman's thinking, looking at the Elite show up in Gotham. He's probably just like, oh no, if this is where we're going, I can't follow this. Like, he was probably having a panic attack.
And meanwhile, in Batman books, he's faced the same crisis too, where it's like he keeps just incarcerating the same villains over and over again. They always break out and they always wreak more havoc and endanger more people. And there have been stories where Batman's had to face that too, where, like, you know, if there was some more finality to the way I dealt with some of these evildoers, but he has his own principles and his own stuff. But it's, both sides of that coin of Superman and Batman have had to face that idea of, there are people out there who look at the way they handle things as, what are you doing just putting them back in prison? How many times does the Joker have to break out before something bigger happens? How many times? It's just, it's been a thematic through line with both of our, beloved main DC heroes.
Yep.
Shout out to Jason Todd.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He knows what's up. No. He likes the Elite. Yeah.
I think
Big fan.
Actually, if you think about it, the Red Hood story is technically Batman Superman versus the Elite. It's pretty much, it's right there.
Yeah,
Um,
it's the parallel.
it's the parallel.
It's
Um,
interesting because the comic specifically uses a lot of Batman villains for this very argument. Because like citizens around the world are just like, what if we just killed Victor Zsasz? Like would it be
yeah,
bad if we killed Scarecrow? It's like the argument really works for Batman's like
yeah.
lunatics in Gotham City. It's like I don't know if we should kill a bunch of Superman's villains, but like maybe it's time for the Joker to die. Maybe the Elite have a point.
Maybe. Yeah.
No, and it's interesting you say that, but also because also in the book and in the movie, um, it works for the other for a different benefit too. Because not only are we talking about the worst of the worst when it comes to the criminals that Batman has dealt with through his career, but it's also kind of highlighting the fact that the first line of defense to the ideal of heroism is Superman, not Batman. Like when Lois is having the conversation, hey, can't you just call someone else? Like they came to me.
They brought the
And
fight to me. Yeah.
correct. And Manchester also saying, and we're jumping into, I don't know if you noticed, we're already talking about the movie, so hopefully you're here with us. Um, and then and
Well,
then you have and then you have Manchester when he's making his big speech in the moon. He goes, and he's going to be the first. And if anybody else comes up right behind him, we're going to knock him out as well. But he's not necessarily talking about literally killing them only. He's talking about what they represent, because that's really what it was. I love how Superman. He understood Superman's is the symbol that he needed to take down. Now, like even if you can kind of notice like through the through line of the story that Manchester understands that he can say whatever he wants, but unless he takes Superman down and what he stands for, he's not really going to convince the world of his way. Which is of course the finale of this story is so great, because he doesn't get his way. But
and I also just
let's
love I just say I love how meta the story is though too in a way,
yeah,
because it kind of takes aim at how sort of old-fashioned and sort of corny and boring Superman is. And that's something that fans have been saying for years, that the people who don't like Superman see
yep,
him as a sort of dated out, old-fashioned idea of what heroes are, and that's from 1938. We like cooler, edgy, more trendy superheroes nowadays. And over the years, there's been like this recurring motif that Superman is an outdated concept, and that's why he's just it's time to make him cooler and edgier and update him and reinvent him. There's always been this sort of self-consciousness around the king of superheroes for some reason, and this story really kind of like it takes it and incorporates it into the actual fictional world of Superman. But I love the meta-ness of it, because it does sort of comment on the same kind of annoying arguments we've had at the lunch table since middle school, about,
yep,
is Superman still relevant? He wears his trunks on the outside. He's so corny and perfect, and he always, seems to like go for the right way. And, it's just, I like that the story kind of, plays with that idea as well within the confines of a true Superman story.
yep. So let's do a quick overview. So in this particular um in the film Superman versus the Elite, which is pretty much covering the entirety of this comic book, um we see Superman um in the crosshairs of this new band of metahumans called the Elite, led by Manchester Black, that are questioning Superman's ways of doing things in a very public manner. They understand that they want to break the status quo that Superman has set throughout the years, stating that his way does not work, and that sometimes you do have to become violent, monstrous, to exact justice. And of course, the movie explores the clash of these ideals, the clash of these characters, and at the end really highlights what Superman has always been, which is the ideal to strive towards, because there's always a path to do the right thing, even
Always
if it's
believe.
hard. Yep. That final speech, Mike was saying it. dreams. Dreams is what lifts us up. Dreams is what saves us. Such a and also pulled straight from the book. It's so good. Um, so I like the animation a bit more than because if you read the book, the animation of the book, it's very crude, and it's of the time, of course. Um, but I like how they kind of dialed it down to Saturday cartoon Superman for the movie, which plays I think a lot better. Um, now the film starts slow. Atomic Skull plays a big role in the film. I like that they added that because that's not in the book. I love how they added that as a means to show off different sides of the argument and expand the story. Um, for me, one of the most important characters in the film is this. I don't know if he's a senator or a scientist. Um, Ephraim Baxter's kid. The
Yeah, he
one
was like a
that,
UN representative.
yeah, he's yeah.
Mhm. Yeah.
I love that character because I love how they brilliantly use him as a lens to kind of give us a sight into how younger generations process information and how emotional they can be, and sometimes how wrong things go because they are emotional. But that scene where his dad dies and he's confronted with the elite, and he just says that scene is so emotionally charged. Um,
Respectfully, screw that kid. Because why did he
Yeah.
run towards the danger? What? His dad would still be alive. We didn't run towards the elite and this evil villain. That pissed me off so much because, like, I get why he wants him to kill him. I get it, but we wouldn't be in this situation if you just went home. You run away from the giant.
If you
atomic
listen to
man.
your dad, yeah.
Seriously,
He's a
Uh,
fanatic. He's that teenager where you're just like, okay, you're a little hard headed. We told you not to touch the stove, but you touched it anyway. So like, you just gotta learn to love it.
no, but he touched the
Things
stove
to
and his dad got burned. That's the annoying.
That's what I'm saying. Like, that's unfortunately his ultimate lesson. It's
his
like, all right,
dad got
you just need to
dusted.
learn.
It's not even burned. He got dusted. That was some
Ashes
Infinity
to
War
ash.
stuff, bro. He got snapped. Like that's
Literally. And I'm only going to defend this kid a little just simply because it just, man, to kind of counteract against Mike, it's just like, I think it was necessary just to show, like, hey, see how bad this can get. Because this kid, he loved the elite more. You know, he was a fan. You know, like if they had a social media account, he'd probably be a fanboy. He'd probably be in comments defending all four of them. You know, making fan edits of these people. Yada yada yada.
yes.
You know,
Maybe
like
like
there'd be
hashtag or the
you know,
elite. Yeah.
exactly, like they've had some kind of like sphere of influence on YouTube, definitely. But unfortunately, this kid had to then. So I get why he kind of ran to it because he wanted to like, oh look, my favorite, you know, my all-star team is out here doing their thing. Like I need to go see it in person. Essentially, it just so happens that now you got a long kid, you got trauma now. So like I don't know how
Yeah, and
your life is
it's
going to
also
go.
kind of hidden. Like they subtly hint how big of a fan is. But if you guys notice, when he puts his phone down and he starts running and pulls up his jacket like a zipper, you can kind of see he's wearing Manchester Black colors in his shirt. He's wearing
Yeah.
that England flag.
He
You
has the
know,
blue and red.
yeah, yeah. It's
Right.
those not the
Why
right
is a kid
ones.
from America wearing a man? Like, sir, I need you, my guy. There's so much we need to unpack with this kid.
Yeah. But yeah, I like the fact that they added I don't know, Atomic Skull, how they added that character just to be able to see, and that's just smart writing. They added that character just to have that moment and be able to explore the mentality of someone just switching like that due to trauma, due to pain, because they're trying to illustrate something that's true. Sometimes you go through things in life that are so hard that you don't have the time to process and you just act emotionally, whether it's good or bad, and you mix things. You think that it's the right thing to do because you're filled with this rage, and you don't take the time to step back and think about something better or something bigger, which it's this doesn't appear in the book, but it really does a great job in highlighting it in the story here.
Yeah.
um
I think it's worth also noting that Joe Kelly, who wrote the author of the original issue, also wrote the script for this movie. And again, it being a single issue, it's like 15, 20 pages probably. And so he had to flesh it out a little bit to make the story a feature-length film. And I appreciate him adding the subtext, right? Like he could have just added filler to the story, but like he really made sure it played into the themes of what was already there, because that's the heart of this comic book. And so, yeah, I'm glad that we didn't just had.
Yeah.
Good.
I was gonna say Atomic Skull is an interesting one too, because he's a good sort of metaphor for the evil that keeps coming back stronger if you don't deal with it right. You know what I mean? Like since he's got this power where he can absorb all the strength and get stronger and stronger, it's the kind of thing where like, of course he's going to get out again, and of course he's going to be a bigger threat next time. And it does add a sense of urgency to like, should we do something a little more permanent about a villain like this, who seems to have this limited ability to continue getting stronger and become a more and more destructive force. So I thought his particular skill set made him a pretty good sort of stand-in for that whole metaphor of just evil that keeps reemerging and creating conversation of, well, what do we do about him? Because what if he gets out again and this time he's like fully unstoppable, So yeah, I liked that choice.
Can I ask you a question?
No. Yes. No.
Just no. No. Are there any other villains that y'all feel could probably fit this role as Atomic Skull? Because not going to lie to you, there's many times where I'm like I think this is the first time I've ever watched. Well, I haven't seen this movie in years, so this is the first time I watched it in a decade, probably, or ever since it first came out. So like seeing Atomic Skull in this, it blew my mind, because I was just like, wait, he is a Superman villain, a villain that's not used often, right? So my mind always goes to like, would this story be different if like Parasite was used in this?
That's the one I was just thinking about.
Yeah, me too. I was thinking Parasite also. Yeah.
Yep.
Because I do notice, like, and yes, I still want everyone's answer. Mario and Brandon, we're all in agreement with Parasite. Mike, if you got somebody different, I would love to know as well. But like,
Godzilla.
Hey,
he's in the comics.
Baby Joy.
Baby Joy. But yeah, it just feels, because we're on this little like thinner piece. I feel like we're not only is this movie about power in the wrong sense, but it's also about power in restriction to some degree, and what I mean by that is like the choice you make in how to use what you do, or like what your presence makes in what that means around how that impacts people essentially.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that's definitely right there with everything that the elite stand for, because part of their ideals is the fact that if I have power, I'm going to make change, but I'm going to make change in whatever way I want to make change, no matter the cost of that change. And then you have the Superman approach, where just because he has power doesn't mean that guardrails are not important. Does that mean that guidelines are not important? Because unrelenting released power can have consequences, which is also the kind of force that Atomic Skull represents. He's just this atomic walking natural disaster that just gets worse and worse and worse if not put under control. But yeah, it's a great way to illustrate and explore ideas of power, and not just a talking scheme sense, but also in those visual sense, which is one of the wonders of comics, because they can explore themes in all these different layers, which make it so great.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's also a story constraint, because we had to pick a character that DC would allow them to kill, because
fair.
I guess from like a meta sense, you can also read it as the elite are bullies, right? And so they're going to bully these villains that are weaker than them. These soldiers, they have no problem killing them, right? Atomic Skull, they have no problem killing him, but they're not going to go to the White House and kill Lex Luthor, And it's like, on one hand, DC would not let them do that. but
Right.
you can't kill Lex Luthor. But on the other,
Right.
it's like, if you're so convinced on killing these world leaders, which is something they do in this movie, Lex Luthor's in the White House, right? Why aren't they going to go kill the Joker? You know, like, they have a ship that can teleport them across the globe, across the galaxy, and they're not doing that, right? And so I think it's also, one, it's a Superman story, so they can't go like just killing every major DC villain, but it's also just this idea of they're still bullies and Superman has to stop them. And that's kind of just the heart of every Superman conflict, where people in power are taking advantage of the little guy, and Superman has to step in and stand up for them. And so I think that's how you can read it as well, where I don't have a specific villain that I would replace Atomic Skull with. Again, it would have to be somebody who's known by the audience, but not important enough to where it would be a problem if DC killed them in this one-off movie. So yeah, I honestly think Atomic Skull is probably the perfect choice. I don't think I would change it, actually.
Fair.
I feel like aside from Parasite, maybe Metallo, but one of those just, yeah, I think Atomic Skull was pretty much right on the money for this. But Parasite would have been an interesting one too, because imagine him around the elite suddenly being able to absorb their powers and how dangerous that would be as well. So he could have been an interesting alternate for sure.
Especially with Cold Cast being this power-hungry kind of character. Parasite just eating off, becoming a major force, where Manchester feels he has no choice but which would be a different take on the whole thing, which is interesting. It's funny you mentioned Metallo, and in my mind is like, yeah, the only thing is you would have to link Lex a lot more into the story, because Metallo and Lex are always like pretty like this, which is funny.
Yeah,
in this version of the story, Lex is not around.
No, because
it's
2012. Yeah, it's 2012, and I don't think for simplicity's sake they don't want. Yeah, they don't want it, but they don't want to say he's the president, because this is based on that story from 2001, and Lex is not the president in 2012. And so for new viewers who haven't read this book, they're gonna be like, "Why is Lex in the White House?"
Right. And we're in the New 52 era, so like we're far past any idea of Lex Luthor being president.
Was this movie made in retaliation for the New 52 from Warner Brothers Animation? Is that what that was?
A year later.
Coming there was a new initiative. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. And it's very interesting. I wanted to mention this also, because we've all talked in the beginning of the show, at the top of the show, we talked about what makes a great Superman story, right? And we talked about the heart and the heart, the essence, the fun, the ideals. And whenever we see Superman in any other animated project with a team, he is just Superman. Like, he's just there to punch Darkseid, and that's really all he does when he's teaming up with other characters in other films. It's very rare that we see him be Superman, which is why, Mike, I keep saying we need that. Whenever we get our Nightwing movie, we need to see him giving him the inspiration for the Nightwing, bro. It needs to
I'm cool with the Nightwing flashback. We can get a little Robin flashback in the Nightwing movie.
Yeah,
Let's do it.
We need it. But like, it's even in the world of DC, a lot of times it's even hard to keep Superman, you know what I mean, like beyond the punching man.
It's interesting you say that, because there's this little show called Justice League that came out, right?
That show. And
one of the issues in season 1 is that Superman got his ass kicked in every episode of season 1, because he was basically the jobber who comes in. If Superman loses, that justifies why the rest of these characters have to be in this story. And it became such a problem that fans complained so loud that it made Dwayne McDuffie and Bruce Timm and the entire team like reconsider how they wrote the character, because like, oh man, Superman's losing a lot. He's now weak and useless, because if he's only there to be the strong guy and the strong guy keeps losing, what narrative purpose does he have on the team? And so if you see season 2 and then into Justice League Unlimited, they really like turn around how they write that character, and that's why it becomes one of the best interpretations of the Justice League, because now they're writing Superman with a purpose. And you get to the Argus arc, right, in Justice League Unlimited, and Lex Luthor's running for president, and he's got to do all this other stuff, and it's like Superman's the focal point now because they finally got his place on the team and pushing him to, again, his brink morally, because Lex Luthor now has all the power. He's president. What do we do? So yeah, you're right.
But if you were to pick a scene that surprised you or that you enjoyed the most in this film, what would it be? Cliff.
I was hoping not to go first, but
I'll jump in. Why is Pam so horny? That's my thing. That's the thing that's
Why is what?
the most.
I
Why is
don't-
Pam so horny?
Are we going to talk about Pam or are we going to talk about Lois?
no, I think Pam deserves the spotlight because Lois, I
Okay,
get
fair.
it.
That's her
Like,
husband
this-
at this point. They can do
Right.
whatever. I don't care. It's Pam for me.
100%. 100%. But damn.
I am a
just
Hello
saw
Snakes
it
is
four
out here
times.
being wild.
Okay.
Yeah, the
I don't know.
hormones are flowing free in this one. She
Yes.
was all about. She needed some of that Kryptonian love, apparently.
Yeah, and she was ready the whole time. So, but no, yeah, the whole thing with Menagerie and Pam, I mean, Menagerie is the name of the character, but of course everybody calls her Pam for some reason. Apparently that's her name, but yeah, I don't know. I don't know why we went there. That's just where
My
we went.
only-
That's just, we
my
need
only
to have
thought of,
something
like-
edgy and dark, so we got horny Pam.
Which is weird because like the movie is arguably already edgy and dark in comparison to what animated movies were coming out before,
You're not
like or
wrong.
during this time. So like I guess to me Pam kind of fits this like lustful example of wanting power. I don't know. Like I still haven't put it together because it just
I-
every time she says something it just throws me out of the movie because I'm just like, stop, miss, you're nasty. What are you doing here? Like you killing people,
you're
blah, blah,
nasty.
blah.
I guess we can make the case that again, these are parodies of like the Authority and these other characters. So like we have she could be like the classic femme fatale type character archetype where it's like she's super sexy and she's super horny and it's turned up to 11 because we're making a joke out of it. Kind of like how Manchester Black is British because Superman's the American hero and we're playing up the accent. He's not, you think it's a shirt, but it's just a full on tattoo on his chest. And it's just like, okay, dude, pull it back, relax.
Yeah, we
Nobody's
get it.
that
You're
patriotic.
Is the magician guy like our closest thing to like Constantine? Just bad, I guess.
Probably.
He likes to drink and can pull anything out of a hat. Like
Yeah.
That's
Mm.
their take on that's how he really sees Dr. Seuss. That's really what the hat is.
not Doctor
The,
Seuss.
the cat in the hat. It's his version. Chinese people, hat, cats. It was a bad joke.
And Cold Cast is
Um,
just Cold Cast at this point. He can absorb powers.
Yes. Yes.
Yay.
So I love how you led with. I was like, what was your favorite part of the movie? Why is Pam? so
I was
questioning
stalling
it?
so Cliff can think. That's really what it was. I just
This is my thing. I still ain't think, but I'll go anyway. No, my favorite moment. There's so. I think there's three for me, but the main one was really the conversation that Lois and Clark has the night before he does his big performance. Essentially, just like it takes me to that opening scene for the Superman trailer where Lois is just grilling Clark. It just feels very honest. But specifically, in terms of this movie, she's sitting there and she tells him like, "I might have done the same thing. Like, I don't know. I'm not sure here and whatnot." And in contrast to Clark being like, he is so set in his beliefs that he's just like, they are doing this the wrong way. They are actively promoting violence to a degree where they're promoting murder of, people. And I get it. These people have done bad things, terribly bad things, but it's just like, who are we to still say they need to be gone. Because at that point, are we any better than them? At least that's how I kind of interpret the scene a little bit, and it really amped up the final fight, if you will, for me. Because I was just like, yeah, this kind of blends in everything I love about Superman. Is that, again, he's that constant. He, no matter what's going on, he's always just like, hey, no, we need to rethink this. Like, if it gets to the point where we feel like we have to actively remove someone from existence, okay, like, we need to pause the brakes here because something's wrong.
Yeah.
I think to that point, I think almost every scene, this movie really captures the magic of the Lois and Clark relationship. Because not only do we see fun Lois and Clark, we also see the vulnerability between these characters. Because Superman is someone that throughout his entire life, because of who Clark Kent, for what he's capable of, he's always been someone to have his guard up to a degree, and for him to lower that shield and allow himself to have these type of very strong, powerful conversations as a couple with Lois, it's some of the best writing that you'll get out of Superman. Because the fact that Lois goes far to the point where it's like, I'm scared, like I think they can beat you, like this is like, I'm
Yeah.
not even talking to you, like I'm like, that is a conversation that someone like the person that you love the most is pleading to you, because you are the person that they love the most. And the fact that they're exploring that type of dynamic in that way is so powerful. um and the fact that as a man, he acknowledges what his partner is saying, but as the man of tomorrow, he still has to leave the house. He still has to go to work. He still has to put the suit on, which is why whenever you see the actual letter on the floor where it says "believe, always believe," it's like, because no matter what happens, um, this is something that I have to do, and I know you respect me for doing it. And the fact that just like Clark values his, there it's not clear of his wife, but I'm gonna say wife. He honors his wife's um perception of the situation and presents that love and understanding. Um, he still pursued on and go, and I think that's part of the magic of that relationship. And this movie does a great job in displaying that. So that's a great pull, Cliff. Great pull, Mike. If you were to pick a favorite moment in the film, which one would it be?
Ooh, obviously it'd be the speech, but I'm not going to talk about that because we're going to talk about that. I assume at some point anyway.
Yeah.
I just appreciate the way Clark defeats the elite in this story, because it's a level of intuition and brains that we don't see Superman use that often. You know, like people forget that this man knows every language on the planet. Like he is not an idiot. They portray him a lot to be like the dumb one when we pair him up with like Batman. Sometimes like he's super smart. He's good. He's good. But like the idea of he got their ship to turn on them, right? Because he realized that it was basically being held captive by these people. He made a deal to with the ship. It's just one of those moments where it's like Superman's compassion and empathy and respecting all living things, right? When they say the ship is alive, he makes note of that. He's like, oh yeah, but they probably don't want to be involved in this. And so he does what he needs to do to even make sure the ship makes it out safe. And that's just that's a detail that it's like, they didn't have to go there, but it's like, that's how much he respects all living things. And I just love the entire like finale of the story, because I watched this movie with my sister. She watched it for the first time. And for 80% of the movie, she's just sitting there. She's like, but they're right though. Because what if we just did kill Darkseid and the Joker and Bane, but by the time we get to the end, it's like, but what gives them the right to decide who lives and who dies? And she sees the darkness in Superman at one point, and it scares her a little bit. And she's sitting there like, he actually did that. He actually went there. What is happening? And so when he gets to the speech, she's kind of sitting there like, they got me. Okay. Yeah, I get it. And I'm like, story be effective
And
in
another
real
one.
time. And I'm like,
That's
they
magic.
nailed it. If it was actually able to like sway her to a specific side, and she knows DC lore, she gets Superman, she gets all these characters, but it's like she was with the authority. I mean, the elite. Excuse me, she was with the elite for like 80% of this movie, and Superman was able to change her mind, and that's how I know this story was effective. So that was great.
Mary, what you got?
Oh man, for me, it's all about that moment on the moon after we think he's dead for a second, where we're looking at that scrap of cape on the ground, and Lois is crying at the TV, and we're seeing that all the people who had once been cheering on the elite suddenly realize, wait a minute, this can't be. Is he really gone? And is this our fault? We pushed him into this fight with them, and like.
Yes.
When all of a sudden George Newbern as a voice actor surprised the hell out of me, because like when Superman just becomes that disembodied voice, like all the warmth is gone from his voice anymore. He's just this cold, detached, calculating character where you're like, whoa, what happened to Superman here? Like, the performance to me there is so it's phenomenal. So as soon as that happens, where he becomes this creepy voice, and then it looks like she gets, horny Pam gets killed, the Hat gets free, and they pull all the oxygen out of his lungs, and he can't summon any magic, and he looks like he's dead, and his lungs imploded according to what Superman just sort of bluffed was happening to him. Like that whole thing where we're just like, whoa. Both times that I saw it, I kind of had to like, there's no way this is real. I know that this is a surprise, but is it? Like because I didn't read the book, and I'm like, I come at this story in particular knowing very little about the outcome of it. That the performance and the portrayal is so strong, and the way it's staged is so bleak and dark and violent. And then when you see him finally, the costume's all tattered, and he's got the red eye, and he looks deranged. So to me, like that whole scene right there, like that's the big show-stopping moment, obviously, that really just sticks with me. And I think George Newbern has to get huge props for his acting during this section of the movie, because throughout the rest of it, he's got that thoughtful, contemplative, concerned Superman element to everything he says. But then right there, it just becomes cold, and this is what you wanted? Well, brace yourself. And it's like, whoa, goosebumps, So yes, to me, that's what it's all about. That moment on the moon where suddenly Superman disappears, we think he's dead, and then that crazy, cold, disembodied voice arrives, and bad stuff starts going down for the whole elite. I'm all about that. Hello.
I guess I'm in control now because I don't know if Brandon's talking.
Brandon is speechless.
I was just gonna add that George Newbern, wasn't he like, this isn't his first time voicing Superman. I'm pretty sure he voiced Superman and other shows previously. So like this is just giving him a new opportunity to show that darker side of the character, right? I think that's also what plays into why it's so chilling, because you're like, hey, we know you're Superman, you're not allowed to do that. That's why when Manchester Black even says you can't play on our rules, that's not who you are.
This isn't you. Yeah,
they were betting on him nerfing himself, and I think that's why him killing the elite is so effective, because you have that moment where you're like, oh, he was holding back this entire time. He could have just been doing this to everybody, and that's why you have to check your power, and that's why it's so effective, so immediate, where it's like, oh yeah, because look, and that's why the audience reaction I think works too, because if the elite deem you to be bad and they kill you, what then? They just deemed Superman, the nicest guy on earth, to be a bad guy, and they were going to try and kill him.
Yeah,
true.
Yeah,
and it's actually funny now thinking about it. One, I didn't realize how many times in terms of like cinematic language Superman has died, Like it doesn't happen often in comics, but in movies, it's happened in so many iterations now. I'm thinking about it.
Yeah.
But
It
secondly,
happened so much we had to make a joke of it. That's why they were like, every time they die, they just leave a little piece of this cake.
wow, that's actually that's so accurate. Damn.
Yeah.
But no, it's more when I think about how Superman introduces being creative with your powers to the elite, like on their first like rescue mission together. You know, he tells like, hey, here's your chance to prove yourself. You know, you in or you out. You know, in terms of being taking on the heroic job essentially. You know, to then in this finale just kind of go full blown. He uses his powers, but it's really just speed and like vibrato in robots. Like he doesn't use any other powers in this entire finale. But
The clever
it works,
use
you
of
know.
Bluetooth speakers. No,
Yeah. And he trained under the tutelage of Batman. Like I get it. I understand. But it works for this story.
He's texting Bruce at the end of this. Did I do okay?
Like,
Um,
I mean, was that a
but
good fear tactic? Like let me know. Let me know,
yeah,
my guy. Question mark.
stop writing, Clark. But yes, so it's funny because we kind of like different sides of the same event, and I like the reveal in the sense of similar to what you mentioned, Mike, that because he's such a caring being, he cares about all living things. The fact that he went the extra mile to be like, hey, I'll get you home, talking to the ship, right? That he would go that far is because he's able to see that far. He's able to see that far ahead because he thinks on the good of all, not just on him and getting what he wants done. He wants everyone to be in good shape. But what I love most is the reveal that behind this plan, he was still Superman no matter what. I love the fact that the Helix robots were represented from the very beginning in the story, which, by the way, they're not in the books. The Helix robots are only in the film. And the fact that you see them here and there, like he's Superman in the world, but in his base, he's always has a team. He's trying to as a team, he has his team figuring stuff out, not just Ubering Lois back and forth London too, but
I hope
but
she
I love
tipped. Really.
hey man.
Which
Um
how does that? I still imagine how does that work? Like a random robot just flying you across the ocean. I'm like, is this safe for you,
it's
Lois?
movie
Like,
magic, man.
Clark can get you some kind of car or something. Like he got Kryptonian tech. They can make something for you. Like don't do
I
this to
think
yourself.
I think she prefers the
Also, we're in the Justice League world. We got boom tubes. Like, somebody at the like Miss Terrific at the Watchtower could have just teleported her somewhere. Like, it's fine.
she gets a free pass. She has that Metro card maxed. So um I love the fact that when you see all the robots there, like they're an extension of Superman, and it kind of has that meta idea of if we follow the ideals that he is portraying, we can all help too in our own way. You know what I mean? Like you don't have to be the man, but if you follow what he's saying, you can be that Helix robot that is able to catch that body and lift him up, able to stop that car that one time, able to direct people to safety that one way. You know what I mean? Also, in a big parallel, also when you have Hat creating a perimeter, it's all these big scary samurais and people are just shooing away. All the Helix robots are just there, chill, and just keeping people calm in the middle of everything. And that's kind of that's one of the things that I love the most about the reveal, because he thought about what he was doing, what the result of what he was doing was going to be, and how far he really had to go if he was to execute, but not affect the message that he's trying to present, because he understands that in the middle of all these theatrics, the most important thing is the message. And this takes us to the speech at the end. The way he finally ends the conversation with Manchester Black. And I'm gonna read it from the book because I have it in front of me. And as
Everybody, turn your
as
Bibles to Action Comics 775.
Book of
um
Cal. Yeah.
so in the final argument after Clark shares the fact that he just lobotomized Manchester Black to make him powerless, non-meta. Um, Manchester Black reads, "You stupid son of a motherless camel." Oh my God, such a bad book. You
We
should have,
can't curse in comics, remember?
yeah, right. You should have stiffened your up and done
Hey,
us all.
Brandon, we're doing this
Yes.
live, but move the book towards you so you can get in
Yeah,
your
I
mic.
should do that.
There you go.
I'm
There
sorry.
you go.
So he says, "You stupid son of a motherless camel tick. You should have stiffened your up and done us all." So he's saying you should have just killed us all, as opposed to just being a half measure. And then of course he does the usual villain threat, and he goes, "So long as a heart beats in my chest, I'll come after you, you pointy twit. If you think this is over, you're living in a bloody dream world." And then Clark comes back to him and says, "You know what, Black? I wouldn't have it any other way. Dreams save us. Dreams lift us up and transform us. And on my soul, I swear, until my dream of a world where dignity, honor, and justice becomes the reality we all share, I'll never stop fighting. Ever." And then he flies away.
And the
Like,
Oscar goes to.
George Newbern, Superman vs. the Elite. Um, it's interesting. It's so powerful how that one, those speech bubbles, we're talking about a page or less, right? Half a page of it tells you everything about the character. Like that's one of those things that like it tells you everything about that you need to know about Superman. And the fact that the end point of this book of this movie was to be able to say those words and and set up that those words and those declarations and that's what makes this movie a great Superman story. It's a great story, but that's what makes it a great Superman story. Um, I think all of us got a little verklempt when he was saying those words so powerfully.
And he was being Superman. Because really,
Yeah,
going back to what we were saying in the beginning too about what makes a good Superman story, it's about the ideas, it's about what he stands for, it's about who he
yeah,
is on
yeah,
the inside and how he tries to push us to be our best more than it is about how heavy the stuff he can lift is or how hard he can
yeah,
punch is. The real true essence of a great Superman story is he hits you in the feels and makes you feel like I need to learn from him. I need to be more like that. And if more people were like that, the world would unequivocally and undoubtedly be a better place.
right.
And it's funny because I was kind of in a bit of a debate with somebody on Twitter earlier on X, and they ended up blocking me because they're like, no, it's his godlike powers that make him Superman. And I'm like, that's not what makes him super, but there are
Yeah,
people who still like they think it's the stuff that he could lift, but it's
yeah,
those words he spoke at the end there that really
yeah,
was the most Superman part of the whole dang thing.
yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, and it's funny
Yep.
because it's one of the few. It's funny you mentioned that because one of the few examples that we've had in film or animation that I keep going back to as I think for the longest time I at least downplayed it, and now I see with different lens. It's just surrounded by not a great movie, and I think that's why it doesn't land as powerful as it is. But the ending of Superman Returns, where he's lifting that kryptonite island
Island.
into the sun or whatever, that is one of those things where he's not just everybody sees that as an act of no, he's putting his life on the line because if this continues to do what it does, it's going to hurt so much people. And him and to me that's one of the best Superman moments I've seen on film. I love that moment, but because it's not surrounded by a really touching powerful Superman story, it's just an isolated moment.
it's interesting you name that moment because I know we're just now on Superman in general, and we've now left versus the Elite. That's okay. but one of my favorite moments recently, it's My Adventures with Superman. Great show. But there's a moment early on where he and Lois are in trouble, as they do, and they're getting shot at. And he jumps in front of her and he takes the bullets. And she's like, I didn't know you were bulletproof. And he's like, I didn't either. I just knew you weren't. And that's who Superman is, where he's like, he jumped in front of her, putting his own life on the line. Luckily, he was bulletproof. But him being bulletproof is not what makes the character tick. It's him being willing to take a bullet for someone, which is so interesting.
That love for care of life. Yeah. What you got, Cliff?
Also, my bad. Now we're gonna take it back to the Elite real quick because it's in general to Superman, but also shout out to Podcast. Like again,
yes,
great advice. It helps.
Yep.
You know, that whole scene of just like, what did he say? When people are scared, they have like a tendency to hop on the bandwagon, yada yada yada.
Yeah. Yep.
And you know, they will stumble, they will fall. Shout out to Man of Steel. Connections, people. It's all there.
There's
such a
lot
quotable
of good
movie.
Quotes there. It's a quotable movie. It's just, you know, there's something wrong.
All of them are quotable. Like earlier today, I'm just like, if man won't kill God, the devil will do it. And it's like, I hate this version of Lex Luthor, but it's a bigger quote.
No, and also, no, yeah, but also going back to the whole Pa Kent scene in the film, I love how the conversation starts. Yeah, some people were talking stuff, so I had to smack a couple of them because we're talking nonsense. Like, oh my God, okay, Pa. He's showing hands when people talk back about his son.
Yeah, it's so great. Can I be a comic nerd for a second and talk about Manchester Black? So at the end of this,
mean that already.
You know,
who have you been this past hour and 6 minutes? Who are you?
First of all, how dare you? Second of all, you're totally right. No, but
you don't need permission to be yourself, Mike. Okay.
Stop.
I sit here in a My Hero Academia hoodie, unprompted. But no. So at the end of the story, Manchester Black's like, hey, if you think this is the last of me, you're living in a dream world, right? The next appearance, I think it's the death of Lois Lane of this character, where he's like, I'm going to show up and I am going to ruin your life. And I'm going to basically break you to the point where you cross over to the dark side. So he kills Lois Lane. He ruins Superman's life and like takes the thing he most holds dear. And Superman doesn't break. Even still, he doesn't break. And I just think, again, that speaks how powerful that character is. And more of the meta nature of people keep trying to push Superman to his limit. There's a new book. No, it's not new anymore, but at the time it was Superman and the Authority that came out by Grant Morrison. So that book only exists because at the time DC was doing their 5G thing and they were doing all these like reboots of these characters. And so the pitch for Superman was Clark goes bad, John becomes Superman. And so they were like, hey, Grant Morrison, would you like to write the story? Grant Morrison is like retired from comics at this point at the time. And Grant is just like, I'm not writing comic books. And then he heard the pitch. He's like, you're going to do what to Superman? You're going to do what to Superman? You're going to make him the villain? No. And he came out of retirement to save the character. He's like, you know what? We're not going to make Superman evil. Instead, we're going to just send him over here with this group of characters. And who's on the Authority at the time? Manchester Black. And then they redeem the character and he's teaming up with Superman in this comic book. And so in DC lore, Superman eventually redeems Manchester Black. But we only get to that point because somebody once again had to save Superman from going and being twisted and being changed for the sake of rebooting him in a modern era. Somebody still had to hold on to what that character is supposed to be. And I love that Grant Morrison was like, I'm going to come out of retirement to make sure you guys don't screw up this character. Because if you make Superman evil, there's no coming back from that.
And that just makes you wonder, like, this man, they're coming out of retirement again to write, I think it's Batman Deadpool, which is like the DC version of a crossover. Like someone else is writing the Deadpool Batman issue, which drops in a few months. I'm just like, how interesting of a story do you have to make for Batman and Deadpool? that Grant Morrison is like, oh, I'll write that. Like, what are we doing?
I'm
Just
a little
add the nerd
concerned.
tidbits.
Yeah, I'm a little concerned about that book. Not to get distracted with bat lore, but Deadpool is just more annoying Deathstroke. So like, I don't know what you can do to make this book that interesting.
More annoying Deathstroke. Well
He
said.
could just break the fourth wall, really, and make some quips about Batman being an orphan. Like, he could just hit a little more below the belt,
Martha.
Why did you say that name?
Yeah, right.
It'd be funny if he does that in the comic. Like at some point, like Batman's about to really kick his ass. Should I say Martha? Will Martha?
That's
make
what
a stop?
you already know. That's the first. That was the pitch. That was the first page that they pitched, and they were like, "Sold."
Martha. Now I want to go to watch Superman and just a shirt that says Martha. That's all it says.
You should.
I'm gonna be that one guy.
I love
Hey,
that
I'm
for
gonna
you,
watch it
man.
more than once, so Martha shirt. But guys, we've done the thing. We've talked Superman versus Elite. We've dissected the ideas of what makes a great Superman story, and as promised, Mario, we haven't heard your thoughts on Superman 2025 in a long
Yeah.
time. You've been doing a
Yeah.
countdown of the weeks, of the moments, of the days.
Yes.
You had an amazing trailer reaction, very emotional. We've had a lot of more content come out. Like there was that ticket release trailer, couple of character posters, and like definitely the social media train of James Gunn's Superman. It's in full effect now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Where are you at with Superman 2025?
I'm at the place where I gotta settle myself down because my internal hype is so high. I'm worried that like there's no way it could live up. But needless to say, I think the film is in the right hands. I think we are on the precipice of receiving the best Superman movie that's ever been made. Yes, that includes the original 1978 original. I really kind of get this feeling that James Gunn is bringing just everything that this character needs and requires. I feel like this is going to be the first one of the movies that really embraces the comic book mythology in a way that the previous solo Superman movies didn't do, because the one in 78, that was like a Hollywood screenwriter, Mario Puzo's version of how do I distill this story down into a way that audiences will understand. And then Man of Steel basically just riffed on that and redid the Zod thing, even though Zod wasn't invented until, I don't know, like 23 years after Superman was, and is in no way necessary for a Superman origin. But for some reason in Man of Steel, we just regurgitated the entire main plot of Superman 1 and 2 and we truncated it. Like for some reason, there's been this aversion to just diving into the full scope of Superman's comic book mythology, where we get to see the full Planet Bullpen, where we get to meet all the interesting supporting characters, and we have Crypto, and we have a Fortress of Solitude that's actually like a place where experiments are happening, and he has the robots on his side, and like in so many different ways, I think we're going to finally get the full scope of Superman's world on the big screen. And there's another element to me of what makes a good Superman story that this seems to already be showing us in the trailers and glimpses we've gotten so far, which is that really tricky role. It's a really tricky character because there's really three of them. All right. A lot of people talk about Clark Kent and Superman, but it's really three different characters because there's the farm boy Clark, the pure Clark that grew up with Jonathan and his Martha there in Kansas, who's just him without any, pretense, him without trying to pretend to be anything else. That's just the core man that's raised in Smallville. Then there's Clark Kent, the Daily Planet disguise, the meek, softer version of himself that he invents so he could blend in and not be noticed as he's getting a little too close to the action and working at the planet and all that kind of stuff. And there's the actual Superman character that he puts on as a symbol for the people of Earth to try to inspire them. And of course, they're all three parts of the same, who he is, but really there's three different layers to this character. And so far in the trailers, you see all three, because you see the scene on the farm where he's with Pod and looks very sort of emotional, and he's just himself. You see little glimpses of him with the glasses at the Daily Goof with Jimmy Olsen calling Lombardi, "You're a loser." You see like the kind of more comedic Clark Kent, but then you also you see the here's the character Superman who I become to inspire people. When I have the red cape on, I'm doing something to inspire others. This is, it's a role he plays. And it also seems to understand that, right? Because certain creators, Quentin Tarantino and stuff like that, who feel like Superman is the real guy. And you were even saying earlier that Zack Snyder's films seem to emphasize that Superman is the real guy, as opposed to the suit he puts on and the responsibility that he, tries to follow through on. And in this particular case, it seems to understand that that guy on the farm who hugs his dad, who seems to be towards the end of his life, that's the real guy. The other things are roles he plays, but the movie seems to understand that at a sort of intrinsic level already. And I feel like from what we've seen so far, we get a movie that understands the essence of Superman, that the kindness is what comes first, but it's also going to have all the badassery of him. Those shots in the Tickets on Sale trailer where he punches the guy's teeth out and he's using the heat vision in that spiral attack.
So fucking badass, bro. Yes.
And he's fighting the kaiju, and so we're gonna get to see him be epic and badass and use all those powers. We're also going to see the softer moments on the farm. We're going to see the romance between him and Lois, because there's also there seems to be this urgency and this immediacy to their love. And that scene where he's in the suit and they go to hug each other right before he goes out to face that thing that's hovering over the city in the background. There's there's a potency and an importance to their love and connection and what she means to him and what he means to her, that also kind of just implies that the romance is also going to really be there. So, and then we're going to have the playfulness with Crypto, Mad Dog, it just, I don't know. I feel like we're getting set up here to see the ultimate Superman story. It feels like All-Star Superman level book brought to the big screen. And Lex, Nicholas Hoult looks like he's going to be a generational Lex Luthor. I love his whole monologue that runs through that last trailer where he's like, "I'll kill them too." He's brutal and he's cold and he's calculating. And I love that he was almost Superman also, because during the casting process, Nicholas Hoult was also in the running up until David Corenswet ultimately won the role. And that tells me that James Gunn, somewhere in the script, somewhere in the story, and the larger picture he's trying to tell, he's trying to show Lex and Cal as juxtapositions of each other, as almost altered, distorted mirror versions of each other. I want to see the parts of Lex where, with parents like Jonathan and Martha, he might have ended up like Clark, but there's probably going to be some interesting stuff there, because I just feel like there's definitely something to the fact that Hoult was in the running for Superman, but got Lex. There needs to be, there's an element that tells me there's going to be some interesting layers to their rivalry.
Yeah. Just to note right quick before you move on, he was also in the running for Batman, for Matt Reeves' Batman. So Lex, the guy who's playing Lex Luthor, almost being Bruce Wayne and Clark Kent, is just so fascinating. And I wonder if that just gives Hoult an edge of I hate those two so much.
Yeah.
So this inevitable finest movie that James Gunn is working on, when Lex is the main villain, it's oh, I've almost been both of y'all. So why would you tell me this, Michael?
I'm sorry.
And ultimately too, James Gunn, his stories always seem to be about something. There's a larger picture story being told. It's not just about the spectacle. It's not just about the colorful characters. It's not just about one-liners. There's always interesting themes and subtext and subplot to everything he does. And I feel like he has a very interesting opportunity, similar to Superman versus the Elite, where we're going to have Superman enter a world where there's already lots heroes, and they all have different ideas for how to do this. You have that Justice Gang that seems to work for Max Lord. You have the Authority kind of lurking about with the Engineer and Ultraman and whatever's going on there, but they're buddy with Lex Luthor. There's, there just seem to be some interesting layers here where all these different people have their idea for what heroism is. Maybe some do it as a job. Some of them do it for the benefits. Some of them do it for the fame. He does it because it's what's right, And I feel like ultimately the big sort of end game here, and I don't think it's going to be arriving in just one movie. I think maybe over the course of whatever his individual franchise is, or maybe at the 10-year conclusion of the greatest story ever told, which is what James Gunn calls what he's trying to build here, we're going to get to a place where suddenly the entire world has now been put on notice that Superman's way was the way, So yeah, I see lots of interesting parallels with Superman versus the Elite, and the way that Gunn wants the position. In early quotes, he said something about how, Superman is kindness in a world that thinks kindness is old-fashioned. And sometimes it feels like our world is like that, where to be kind and sincere and vulnerable is, those aren't desirable qualities anymore. Now it's more about how, brash and cruel or biting you can be. Most clicks you can get, say the most outrageous thing, do the most outlandish thing to make your point. And I feel like he gives our paragon of truth and justice to kind of guide the way for, if more people behaved this way, the world would be a better place. So I think Gunn has the whole recipe down. He seems to understand the assignment, and everything I've seen seems to show me that we're going to get a little bit of everything that makes Superman special in this movie. So I'm way in.
Yeah, I was going to ask, did you want the exact quote that he said?
Do it, bro. You say you found a quote somewhere about something. Throw it out there.
Yeah, it's Mike. I put in the private chat, but Mike shared this a while back. It's the EU piece. It was called Superman, New Man of Steel leads DCU of Tomorrow cover. Yada yada yada. Basically, it's a full piece the art writer did back in March. But yeah, pretty much, James Gunn is quoted saying, "I want to tell the story about someone who is truly good in a world that doesn't value goodness, in a world that makes fun of basic kindness and basic human values. The fact that he can fly and lift buildings and shoot laser beams out of his eyes was really secondary to who he was as a person and what he stood for." And I highly recommend anyone, maybe we can put this link to the article in the description after this video as well, but just read that article. It literally breaks down everything that Mario just mentioned, especially about, the corporate heroes, why every character has a purpose, et cetera, et cetera. It's all there for you people. It's a very fun read.
Yeah, it's one of those things too. Like I'm a big believer in the creatives behind a project. So right before we had ever seen any footage from the movie or any pictures from the set, I was just reading all of his comments that he would make in different interviews, and every time he spoke, I was just nodding. It was like, yes, you get it, and to not just have Superman be in his hands, but the entire DC universe in his hands, it fills me with hope. I feel like we've got a good shepherd here. We've got somebody who's ready to lead these characters in a way that on the big screen they have not had a chance to really flourish. And he seems to get it. And I love, there's this one sort of sad quote he has, though, where he's like, I can't do much in the way of science. I can't get into politics, but I could, if I could share these stories of love with the world, that's what I can offer. And the fact that he sees these comic book stories ultimately as stories of love tells me a lot too, where he sees this as a way to say something and to touch our hearts, to give us heroes that are aspirational, that aren't just cool to look at, but that we actually wish we could be more like. That seems to be where he's going with all this. So yeah, James, you got it.
And I
Now let's see
think
if it all holds up. By the way, the talk has been great. Now let's see if the execution matches.
yeah,
Right, like
yeah.
that's where I am right now, where I'm like Clint Barton in Infinity War. It's like, don't give me hope. Don't give me hope, because like we've been burned before.
Yeah.
And like you're right, Mayor, everything he has said thus far, it's just like he gets it. And all the trailers are like, yeah, I'm seeing the DC universe I've read and watched as a kid finally come to life for the very first time.
Yeah.
And there's a part of my soul that's like, oh, but they're gonna screw it up, aren't they? Like I need to let go. I need to embrace hope,
Yep.
right? Embrace the dream, right? But it's
Yes.
like,
Look up.
oh gosh, I do
Just
not
embrace hope for
my
2
expect-
hours. Just
Yeah,
2
my
hours.
expectations are so freaking high at this point where it's like, there's no way I don't come out of this movie disappointed. So I need to learn to temper them a little bit. So if this movie's a 7 out of 10, I can live with it. But if it's a 7 out of 10 right now, I would be crushed.
No, and it's crazy because Mike and I were talking about this the other day, off the air, and one of the things that I think hasn't happened in a very long time, not just with the character, but also with a franchise this big, is everything's buzzing about Superman. Where was the last time that everything was buzzing Superman? Like,
Yeah.
this doesn't happen, like, or hasn't happened ever. And
We've
and
already
Mon-
rehabbed this character's image in the
Yep.
press run.
Mhm.
It hasn't even come
Yep.
out yet, and people feel differently about this character.
and also for me, like, I was heartbroken with the last entries of the last iteration where they destroyed my favorite character. Guess who it is? But but
Right.
I love how
Quick.
yeah, I love how after Avengers Endgame, I kind of left Marvel to their own devices, and I'm kind of like done. I'm good. I'm not.
You're
really
why we can't
watching
have
DC
nice things,
stuff.
by the way. You let Thunderbolts die, and I will never forgive you.
No, I kind of
They-
let Thunderbolts die as well. I paid $6 instead of full price. So
I
I'm
love
a part of
I
this.
love how Cliff just takes the bullet with me. We're good. But
Yeah, I
love-
bought 3 full price tickets to Thunderbolts. I did my part. Okay.
There we go.
but I love the idea that if this movie does the thing where everybody walks out looking up, excited, not just for the character, but for this world, the smile and the hope that I'm going to have for every other project after it. That's like what I'm excited about. Because yes, Superman, Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow, it's filming. Get it. But nobody really cares about that project until Superman comes out. When Superman comes out, then it's going to be, holy crap, this movie was amazing. Where's Supergirl? What's Supergirl? What's going on with that? Wait, isn't a
And
Lantern
Chris
show
goes to
coming?
that too.
Right.
Yeah.
Like all those little things, right? Like that's what I'm excited about, not just for the Superman film because I want it to be amazing, but it's like they're going to do something with this. They're like the idea that these things will happen if this becomes and I think amazing, right? And I think it goes back to what you were saying that like James Gunn understands the assignment. He understands not just the fact that we need to start with Superman because of who Superman is in the mythos, but he understands that nailing this project, it's really what's going to seal the fate of the whole universe. And I love the fact that the seriousness of it and the
It sounds so
joy
dramatic,
of it-
but it's true.
yeah, the seriousness.
It's
No,
not
but
the
but
fate
I
of the
love
whole universe.
yeah, but
Rest
I
on
love
the
the
shoulders
fact
of
that we're
this guy.
talking about it, and this movie feels so fun. Like when was the last time the Superman was fun? There's so much
And-
fun in this movie.
And mind you,
1978.
too,
Yeah,
yeah. But mind you, though, too, like there's a lot of characters in this movie, a lot going on. And I think
Yes.
it's notable that you see this trailer where there's Kaiju and there's Hawk Girl and there's Lex Luthor,
Hulk,
the
Hawk,
engineer
Green Lantern.
destroying the fortress. Like there's so much going on, but it's still very clear that Superman is the center point. Like, in the
Yes.
past, we've seen movies where like, is he going to get lost in the shuffle? Like when BVS was coming out, the trailers kind of made it feel like he's, he's also in this, I think. Like, and this time around, we don't feel that way. That, like
Correct.
somehow he seems to be knowing the fact that yes, the scope of the story involves all these characters from the larger DC world, but he is the center point of this story. He's not going to get lost in the shuffle. It's all about his trip through this situation. You know, so I think it's we're all excited for him. Yet we could have that fatigue looking at all of these different things going on and going, how are they going to make this work? There's just so much stuff going on, you know?
Yeah. I also really appreciate how, again, we haven't seen the movie yet, so this all could fall apart in like 3 weeks when we go see the film. But
stop bringing the dread, Mike.
I'm sorry. I am sorry to be the Manchester Black of this podcast. It's like, no, but I do appreciate how we're not just highlighting Clark, we're highlighting Superman's world. We've seen Jimmy Olsen more in promo material for this movie than we ever have in anything.
Yes.
like
the
Brad,
last one just got shot. Like
we don't even claim that Jimmy Olsen. He didn't even have a name in the original cut of that movie. But like even on TikTok, it's like he's just like vlogging in the Daily Planet. And it's just the most like wholesome, goofy thing. And it's like they get the supporting cast as well, because it just being Superman all the time would get a little stale. But it's like Superman and his friend Jimmy Olsen, Superman and Lois, seeing Perry, seeing Lombard, right, calling him a loser, and like you can see how nobody would recognize that Clark Kent is Superman from the promotional material as well, because his hair is different. He's wearing this baggy suit, but he's also just like the biggest dork, just laughing with Jimmy. And you look at him, and you're like, yeah, that's not Big Blue. That can't be, right? And so it's like it's embracing all the aspects of the character, but now it's also justifying why they exist and why certain characters will never see his true identity, because Office Clark is the guy I talk to every day, and we just talk about sports and we goof around and we take silly photos, and you don't think of that being Superman, the guy who just punched a kaiju 5 minutes ago. And I love that aspect of like highlighting what makes them distinct, but also just showcasing that world as well.
But the way they released all those character posters, everything was like, here are all the metahumans, and it was each of them. Then it was, here are all his frenemies, and it showed them. Then it was, here's the Daily Planet staff. Like, it seems to be leaning into like, here's this whole greater world of Superman supporting cast that y'all have never seen before, or really, or seen done quite in this way before. And I love that. Again, we're going to see all the different layers and nooks and crannies of his universe this time.
It's so fascinating too, because again, my sister watched this trailer for the first time, and she's like, "The robots are here," because they've never been in live action. She's like, "The dog is here." she's just like, "Oh wait, Jimmy's finally in a movie for the first time in forever." And it's like there's so many just like small aspects of the character that we are all familiar with.
Yeah.
But then I have other friends who aren't familiar with Superman. They're like, why does he have robots in the Fortress of Solitude? What is this about? I'm like, the amount of people who didn't know he fights kaiju on a daily basis. I'm like, oh, you guys don't know anything.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm glad we're finally putting this on screen.
Yep.
A day in the life of Superman. Yeah.
I like it. So as we start to close, I figure I throw one last thing to us, and then we close the episode. Cliff, favorite moment of the trailer for this movie that you've liked so far? Anything that stood out to you that you prefer, that you think it to you was the best moment on that trailer?
It's not even actually, it's not even a visual moment. I'll go fully unique. I'll go full music nerd here, because I watched the Charles Cornell video about how they kind of revamped the Superman theme.
Yes.
And there's just that build up from the beginning where I'm not gonna go full music nerd, like, oh, they're using like a C major chord, then they move to like an A flat. I'm not gonna go that far, but there's references with snare drums and like snare rudiment movements that are reminiscent. Yeah, that part. That's literally the horn part from the original John Williams theme.
Yep.
And that has me giddy. Like, I am, bring back real music in movies, people. That's what I need. Okay.
Okay. See, there it is. Hashtag Bring back real music.
You know,
Oh,
like
and
that's
that's the
what I mean.
great. I love that you mentioned that because how many of us were afraid that we were going to get a Guardian soundtrack for this film because it's
Yeah,
James
that'd be
Gunn.
all needle drops. Yeah, no, we need a
Yeah.
real orchestral score. Yeah.
Yeah, like bring
Yep.
like I hope we get a 15-minute opening with just
No, this movie's too short. No.
okay,
If it
five
was,
minutes.
it was 2 hours, 20
5
minutes,
minutes.
I'll give it to you, but it's too
Okay.
short already.
5 minutes then, just a 5-minute opening theme. That's
Yeah.
all I need. Just transport me into this
Okay.
world, okay?
You'll get don't worry, you'll get it at the end credits. Okay.
Right. Actually, Mike, don't take away my joy. We live in a world where I'm getting a Mr. Miracle TV show. Okay, let me be happy. Let me keep going for it. Okay.
So in other words, wait for the
Well,
TV
you
show.
already are happy. You got your show, man. We got to keep the runtime for the Superman movie going.
So Mike, favorite trailer moment.
Oh gosh. I've reacted to all of the trailers except for this last one. So the biggest moment I got was seeing the dog as a dog guy. Of course. But I love that it's not really a moment itself. I love that we've been humanizing Superman and like we've been making a point to lean all the way into that. And so when that first trailer, we hear that Clark is like struggling to breathe and he's bloody. Right.
Yeah.
You just hear the gas. The first thing, that's your first introduction to this
It's
world.
jarring. Yeah. And,
Yeah.
and he's coughs up blood. Like, what? Yeah.
Yeah. And I just go back to the last interpretation of this character. Do you bleed? You will. Right. And it's like we're questioning his godhood in the previous iteration. And this one we start off with he's human. And the dog has to come save him. And throughout the rest of the trailers, we lean into that of like him getting frustrated, talking to Lois because she's grilling him and like pushing him and making him like argue his stance. And it's like, I like that we're showing the human sides of Clark. Like him snapping at Lois isn't something anybody would ever expect. And that's, again, it's another jarring moment and it surprises you, but it's a very human moment of he's not mad at Lois. He's like, how are you questioning me stopping a war and saving lives?
Like, how is this even a question? Yeah.
Yeah, like, how is it a question that I saved all those people from dying? And I love that we're leaning into that humanity of the character. Like, yes, he's doing the Superman versus the elite thing of like, what I'm doing is right. We need to be morally strong. But what I enjoy about this interpretation of the character is that as he's getting pushback, he's reacting in a human way.
Yes.
Like, and Superman versus the elite, as good as it is, he very much still is doing the, well, I'm Superman and this is the right thing to do and this is how we should do it. Whereas here he's getting frustrated because he's like, how do you guys not get it?
Yes.
How does this not make sense to you to save people?
Yep.
Those are my favorite moments overall of just like humanizing the character, giving him the dog, having him talk to his parents. The fact that both of his parents are still alive for the time being, at least. I'm like, yes, Buckhead's here. Let's go.
Yes.
No,
Those
and
moments.
I love that you mentioned that because one of the things that I love the most about that moment with that conversation is the fact that not only do we see him react like a human, right? Like his emotions, but we also see the fact that he's allowing himself to react because it's Lois. Because if he was in the suit in public, he wouldn't be throwing
this
that
is them
sort
alone.
of...
This is a private
Yeah,
moment. Yeah.
exactly. And I love the
Like,
fact...
Babe.
Exactly.
Seriously.
I've told you it doesn't like I love the fact that that moment, that vulnerable moment kind of highlights that relationship and the quality of the relationship that we're going to be exploring, which gets me very excited. But great pick. Mario, if you were to pick your favorite moment.
I just need to wax philosophical one more time on the understanding of the assignment here, because one thing that Mike said that it got me thinking about it too, where it's like James Gunn seems to understand that the way you tell a good modern Superman story is to keep him pure and make the world around him conflicted and messy. Let everyone else be conflicted. Let everyone else be cynical. Let everyone else be all those other things, but he has to be the true blue pure thing at the center of it. That's something that the last interpretation seemed to kind of overthink, where they were trying to modernize him, so they added all this angst and conflict. And it's fundamentally like that kind of stuff is not Superman. I'm sorry, and I was preaching about it forever on old podcasts that like Marvel got it right with Captain America. You notice how Steve Rogers in the MCU, he is that old-fashioned true blue good hero, but he's put in a world where everything is kind of complicated and complex. He has to, try to navigate this tricky, dark-ish world. And they seem to have nailed that now with Superman, where he is our pure paragon. And what they did was they made the world around him, the complicated part. And I'm like, that's how you do it. That's how you do it without betraying who Superman is in some weird stat attempt to make him seem cool to younger people. Like, no. Now, what I love in the trailers, all the moments where we see the humans rally behind him, like when the guy carries him out of the crater, when the boy is pushing the flag up in the midst of all this chaos and he starts, shouting Superman, when we see all the people looking up and chanting Superman and rooting for him, like all that stuff where it's like, wow, we're going to finally actually live up to the promise of what was only lip service in Man of Steel. You will inspire the people of Earth. You will give them hope. We never really got to see Superman instill optimistic hope in anybody. Yep. And here it looks like we're going to see the people embrace what he's done for us and his messages to us and root for him and help him up. And, those are the moments that really grab me the most so far. But, I can go frame by frame. Love that. I need more of that. But right now, since you're asking for one main thing, I love those moments there where we see the people of Earth loving, supporting, and rooting for Superman. Like that's what's
and that's actually funny because that's exactly what I was gonna say. And it's specifically the scene of the guy lifting him up. And because that moment right there, you could have, if Superman was any other character, he would have been, I got this. Let me just get out of here. You know what I mean? But the idea that he would allow himself to be helped, it shows that connection of, yes, I'm one of you. Like and he's not gonna get in the way of someone else wanting to do what's right by them because he's doing something that's good for society. But the idea of the chant, I think, Mary, we were talking about the first trailer. Like the thing that I love the most, that when you listen to the audio of the very first teaser, you hear this chant, Superman, 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 build up towards the end of it. And the fact that we're seeing a Superman that is of the people, of the man of tomorrow, for a better tomorrow. Like, I love the fact that we're bringing that to the forefront finally, because that has never happened in any Superman film. It is a first. Like the fact that how society is reacting to him and understanding that he is doing something positive in spite of everything else around him.
And he expects nothing in return. Like some of the other heroes we're probably going to meet along the way.
Yes.
He's just trying to help, and that's it.
Yes. And I'm excited about that. Moments like that are the ones that I'm very excited about. And the great thing is that we've been seeing that facet of the movie's environment throughout all promotional material from different angles. So the idea of the public reacting to his saves and to his decisions and to his portrayals of hope, peace, the right thing, like that reaction, that social media clicker of this is Superman today and what he's representing, and also seeing that is directly related to why Lex hates him. It is so a Superman thematic element.
Yeah, they chose him.
Yes, and that is such a Lex Superman story-driven like theme that we've never seen. So I am very excited. I kind of want. I like the idea, and this is just me theorizing, that we may have characters similar to the kid in the elite that thinks one way and then ends probably wearing the cape at the end. I kind of
Hmm.
see moments like that happening, and I'm excited for moments like that happening. Um,
You
but
think
yeah,
there's a Gar Gardner fan out there just like, God Gardner's here. I need to go check him out.
there might be an authority. I mean, Ultraman is there somewhere,
I,
like
I'm just
so.
interested to see because James Gunn recently came out and said that, oh yeah, metahumans have been around for 300 years. We live in a
Yeah.
superhuman society, where the population of quirks has highly escalated over the last few years. But I'm really interested because now we have to justify, why is Superman him, right? Because if this has been a thing we've
What
lived
makes him more than?
right,
Yes,
if
yes,
superheroes have been around, if at least superpowered beings have been around
yeah.
for 300 years, what makes Superman so special? What makes him the person everybody rallies around? What makes him the person that pisses Lex Luthor off? Because if Superman has only been around for 3 years, but metas have been around for 300, the Lanterns are clearly here. The Thanagarians are probably around somewhere, right? Like we've had Jay Garrick at the very least, let alone Barry Allen's probably here because Hal Jordan's also here, right? So like, what makes Superman that guy? That's what I want to see James Gunn tackle, because
Why
he's
he the man? God, tell
right.
me why he the man.
Laying,
And what's
he's
interesting,
laying all
yeah,
that foundation, but the why is
Yeah.
my thing now.
and what's
Yeah.
interesting too is
Yeah.
like there isn't a Justice League yet. So there've been metahumans for 300 years, and a lot of members of people who are eventually going to be in the league are probably in existence already. It's for some reason there hasn't been that galvanizing force that creates the reason for a Justice League. So it is gonna, like, he is gonna be some kind of a catalyst. You know what I mean? Because it would be interesting if like maybe there was a previous version of the league, but it sounds like the concept itself hasn't happened yet. So there's gonna be some sort of lesson here about maybe heroes being much more like, we don't want to interfere in human history so much, or like they have all these different reasons for not having just really rolled up their sleeves and gotten into it the way Superman did, that becomes the catalyst for why there needs to be a team of them. It seems like up to this point, they've been more either like in the shadows or more self-serving in a way, or more, we're going to see how they do it. There's something about Superman's presence in this world that's going to lead to the formation of the first ever Justice League. So yeah, there's got to be something to that.
And can I say one last thing? And I'll stop talking after that. Because y'all both,
Stop it, Cliff.
yeah, right now, because Mario and Mike have both literally just, I thought of something. Because now they're like, people have been around for, metas have been around for 300 years. So now that makes me curious about this Teen Titans movie. I'm like, have the Teen Titans not existed now? Like, is Damian Wayne going to be the foundational member of the Teen Titans in this
Cliff,
world?
don't piss me off.
Crazy.
You know what?
Number
Stop
two.
talking right now.
Number two, if metas have been around for 300 years, then that means I need this man to introduce Bang Babies, which means Static is somewhere around in this world. So now we're doing a Teen Titans
Nice.
movie, and we have a foundation, and Superman inspires these characters. James, you know what to do. Call Michael B. Jordan.
Let's do it.
I'm trying
Let's
to
do it.
help out here, sir. But yeah,
Do it.
Damian's going to be a foundational member, which means Nightwing fans, we're done. We need to move on.
You know, I was having such a good day, and then Cliff just had to go in and ruin it. Whatsoever, we should not let him talk next time he asks.
Guys, we've done the thing. What a phenomenal episode of Summer of Superman. We've talked Superman versus the Elite. We've talked the trailer. We're gonna meet again on episode 3 of Summer of Superman when we review the movie. In the coming weeks, you will be seeing our conversation of the Brandon Routh Superman era. We're going to talk about the Henry Cavill Superman era as we explore those versions of the character, where they failed, what they got wrong, what they got right. And then at a lead up to this 2025 release, July 11th, mark your calendars, a new Superman will be arriving to our planet Earth. We've bought tickets already. We're very excited. It's happening, guys. It's happening this year.
This is real life.
Cliff, if people were trying to find you, my brother, we can find you on the webs, man.
Oh, pretty much here and Cliff Boom on Letterboxd, because I will put my full. This might be a full dissertation review on Letterboxd after I watch this movie. I might just be on the bus home, just typing like my little Twitter, my fingers just going at it, like
Yeah.
grammatical errors and like ill structure, everything, people. So yeah, but yeah, y'all can find me there and here, obviously, when we review the movie.
Mike, where can people find you, man?
You can find me at Novice Cinephile everywhere except for Instagram and Threads, where it's the Novice Cinephile. You can also find me over at Collider.com. We have an article going up about the best representation of Superman in modern storytelling. And yes, it's about All Might. And yes, you should go check it out when it drops later this week. Also, like Cliff said, you can find me here talking Superman, talking My Hero Academia with Isaac. A new trailer just dropped. That's where the Deku merch is on today. Final season. It's a couple months. So great. And yeah, the Insider Chatter. That's the new show that we do on the Chatter After with me and Nate. We just did a whole DC breakdown, talking Wonder Woman, talking Superman, doing all the fun stuff. So yeah. And if Titans news drops, Cliff and I are definitely gonna have to react to it, because if Damian Wayne is the main character, you're gonna see the biggest crash out in human history.
Well, I think that hopefully what this version of the character of Superman is telling us and how they honor the world of Superman, I don't think that's going to happen.
They can't use Jaime Reyes. He's an adult. He's in college at this point. He's no longer a teen.
No, you see, James Gunn is scaring me because he said that his favorite Robin is Damian Wayne. And when anybody ever says that, a part of me dies, because like, okay, I already know we're about to be in for something crazy.
Hey man, maybe we don't get that much Robin from Dick Grayson, but we get to highlight his Nightwing era. So good Nightwing era, not Titans, just new one. Mario, if people wanted to find you, where can they find you, man?
Yeah, so you can find me on all the socials at Superman on Film. You can find me here on YouTube at Superman on Film. And it's funny doing this. This is the first bit of podcasting I've done in like 6 months since I've moved, and it made me realize, getting ready for this made me realize that my home studio is kind of ready to rock and roll. So I think I'm also come out of my hiatus for the Superman on Film podcast with a few weeks left till the release of the film. I think I got to get a few episodes out there. So find the Superman on Film podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, basically everywhere. Find the Superman on podcast, because I'm getting all fired up now, and you got me back in the podcasting mood, guys. So
I
yes,
love the John Wick.
Film.
I think I'm back.
Yeah. I think I'm back.
John Wick energy. And you can find me at Monkey D. Braffy on Blue Sky. And you can find me on the Shadow After, talking Superman, talking films, maybe books at some point. And you can find me on the Amateur Otaku podcast, talking anime whenever I'm available. But our boy Isaac, Jamie, Dish, the crew are doing a phenomenal job talking anime and manga every single week. So make sure you check out the Amateur Otaku. Make sure you subscribe, click on that like button, and share with your friends so other people can talk anime with them there, and other people can talk movies here. Because remember, movies are awesome. They always have something to say, and there's always a shatter. We will see you next time, guys. Stay tuned for more Superman goodness, and keep watching movies. Peace.
I'll be back July 14th.
Hey.
Dreams save us. Later.